Hello and welcome to my Battlebit tier list. To not waste your time, let's jump right into the rules. So the rules are simple. I will judge the weapons on their firepower, control and how they perform stock. Which brings me to the second rule. I will use these weapons without any attachments. Not even camo. Because I like piss yellow and that's embarrassing. I had to have at least 5 kills to try out these weapons to see their performance, which will also make it into the ranking. But be aware, this is my own tier list and everyone has different opinion, but I would like if you would write yours in the comments, because I'm actually interested in yours as well. So let's start with the AK-74. It's not like something you wouldn't expect. The controls are pretty good for the damage you can do. And even in stock, it is still a really great weapon. But, for me at least, it's a 50-50 if you win the fight or not, because of the fire rate. Or at least for me, the biggest advantage when it's stock are the sights. Because of these advantages, I give it an A. So now let's talk about the F2000. I personally really like this weapon, but not stock. The huge advantage of it is that it has 1.6 optics while being stock, which is really good. Don't get me wrong, if they didn't look so stupid and if you could actually see something. Now the gun itself, it handles pretty well as well, although the higher fire rate means you of course have to be a bit more careful with the recoil. But fortunately you can use either these optics or its own iron sights, which work much better for me at least. But because of the things that I just said, it still goes into A tier for me at least. So let's talk about the AUG. As a weapon, it serves its purpose. It's a weapon. No clue what I meant to say there, but I just said it. My biggest issue with this weapon is that before you can kill anyone with its fire rate, you're probably dead by the time. And that's not all, because the AUG itself, of course, it has a higher recoil to its own fire rate. And because of that I unfortunately have to put AUG to B. Now my personal weapon of choice is the SG550. Here, at least for me, the weapon is absolutely great, but with attachments. Here is my main issue. It's like if you took MP5 iron sights and you scaled them down by 50%. Those iron sights SG unfortunately has. The gun itself has really good firepower, there is no doubts about that. It has great control, but it lacks good iron sights. I unfortunately, which really hurts me, have to put this gun into the B tier as well. You see, this weapon looked great on paper. Its damage wasn't too bad, the fire rate wasn't bad as well, although 25 rounds in the magazine is not that much, but we will not care about that. What I absolutely care about is, who thought this will be good? I kid you not, I could not do anything with these iron sights. This gun absolutely sucked with these iron sights. And I thought that at least I could do some hip fire and kill people with it that way. It had so much recoil, I wasn't able to do anything with it. I can say I am not a professional player, I am not having 10 KD, but, and I'm not kidding, this gun absolutely sucked for me. Since this ranking is not about how good the weapon is with attachments, I actually put this gun into F tier. And now the last automatic weapon is the ACR. Now my problem with this weapon wasn't that only the sights were already too small, for me at least. Or not even small, I don't know how to explain, they were either too small or too big. It's something like in between, but it doesn't quite fit right. But let's not care about that. What I care about is its own recoil, which was pretty high. Because you deal 27 damage and with this much recoil it doesn't work too well together. So personally, even though I don't mind this weapon, for me at least with the gunplay I had with it, I have to unfortunately give it a C. Now let's talk a bit about the AK-15. While it for sure has a lot of firepower, the biggest problem for a new bike could be its recoil. Even though it's not going to break your hand when you start shooting it, it is still noticeably high. But I must say, the iron sights aren't too bad for what they are. I actually enjoyed using this gun as a stock as well. This weapon is actually a lot more usable than it seems. And if it was just a tiny bit better, I would actually give it an S, but for now I will go with an A. Now the Scar H isn't a bad weapon as well, it has its own use. It has a higher damage, but a lot less, at least it feels to me, a lot less fire rate. And the iron sights are either you love them or you hate them. For me personally, they seem a bit small. And my biggest issue with this weapon is its mag size. I wouldn't say it deserves the C, because it's just not a middle. It is a good weapon, it is usable, but it just doesn't deserve to be an A, at least for me, which is why I'm giving it the B tier. So the G3 is like a more meaty MP5. It has a smaller mag size than you would expect. It has the same iron sights as MP5, at least I think so, and it actually surprised me how usable it is. The recoil isn't bad at all, even if the fire is a bit slower. And I would much more prefer this gun over the Scar H. So overall, for this weapon, if this weapon had just a bit better iron sights, just a bit better recoil, something that would give me the last thing to give it some bonus score, I would give it an S, but unfortunately I have to give it an A for now. So you see, now this weapon, the more I use this gun, the more I realize it is not bad at all. Actually it's pretty good, but you need to have a certain type of playstyle. Because this gun has only 20 rounds in a magazine, it does not allow for a lot of rushing into buildings and just hip firing everyone, even though it could. Because it has 650 fire rate, which is much better than the 540, for example, the AK-15 has. Now for me, this weapon, if you're gonna be flanking and you know what you're doing, this gun can really stand out. While recording this video, this one fit me the most. I don't know what did it, out of all these things did it. Even if it has a 20 round mag, for me it's an S. I don't know why, but it just fit me so perfectly, I just had to use this weapon. So the M4A1. I thought it's your base M4A1, not much it's gonna happen, your starter weapon. You will have to waste 2 mags to kill someone and it's gonna be pretty boring to play. I was actually kindly surprised with this weapon. Its fire rate and damage does a lot. It is still not the best weapon out there, but it is a really good weapon. And not only for the starting players, but even if you use it now, it can be used really well. But again, it's just not something that suits me. Although there is one special feature this gun has. It is the only weapon in game that I saw that it has models of its rounds in the magazine. But yeah, again, it is not middle. I will not put it into the middle because it doesn't deserve to be there. I'm thinking about the B, but as for myself, how it felt, how I played with it, the iron sights weren't too bad. For me, it could be an A with no problem. So, grows up. Here's the thing, when I started playing this game and I started playing with this weapon, I absolutely hated the iron sights. I hated the way the gun felt. And I'm not even sure why, because now when I try to play with it, the weapon itself was much more cleaner per se, it was much more smooth to play with it, it was actually fine. It has a decent amount of damage with a really good fire rate. The recoil is not actually bad at all compared to what it does. And if you're fighting to like really close range enemies or even some middle ranged enemies, it can be used very well. But even with all of this, I just don't feel this weapon doing enough for me. I don't feel like this weapon did more than the M4. It still just lacks a bit of personality. It still lacks a tiny bit more vision or tiny bit more feel to the weapon. Of something just doesn't feel right about it. I'm not sure what it was, but from my rating, I would probably give it to B. A as well. So here's the thing, this weapon again suits one type of playstyle. It is a silence weapon from the start, which is already a good thing. The problems it has are really small magazine capacity, but a really fast fire rate. Actually the fire rate is about 800 with 32 damage, which can do a lot of hell on earth. But you need to know how to play with this gun. You need to be close to the enemies, you need to be constantly flanking someone. The iron sights actually fit me, but it doesn't mean it will fit someone else. It's a good weapon, but not the best weapon. It doesn't feel great. you still need to add a lot of attachments to it, and this is not what this tier list is again about. So let's move on. So the G36C has a special feel to it. I was a bit skeptical when I tried out this weapon, because it seemed like it's too big, it's gonna be really heavy, it's gonna be hard to control. And some of it is true, some of it is not true. There is a lot of recoil to this weapon, however the recoil only goes up. It doesn't go to the sides as much. And it has a really good fire rate. It has a fire rate of 750, almost as much as A as well. But instead, it has 30 rounds in a mag and a 30 damage, which can be really well used. Now the iron sights are a bit different. For me they were okay, but I wouldn't prefer them. But this weapon did fit me a lot. For me actually it could be an easy S. So you see, about this weapon it really depends. This weapon is supposed to be the better M4, where in stats it absolutely is. It has a 31 damage, 825 fire rate, which is the highest out of its own category. However, this of course comes at a cost of recoil. But actually the gunplay is very nice, it feels very smooth, it feels responsive. The iron sights are pretty much completely the same to the M4, so if you don't mind them, it's completely fine. I have no problem putting this gun to A tier. So the AK-5C was kind of a mystery to me, if I'm being honest. The gun itself has a really good damage, 30 rounds in the magazine. It has a slow fire rate of 600, but of course it comes at the price of recoil. Keeping this gun steady does take a lot of effort, and it's gonna be really useful at close combat, but if you're trying to hit someone that's more than 50 meters away from you, you have pretty much no chance. And that's what kinda bothers me, because this weapon could be absolutely great if it wasn't for this. But again, we are talking stock, and because of these reasons I probably have to give it a B. So the MK20. My problem here is that MK20 and M110 are not the same comparable weapons per se, are not the same weapons to me at least. The MK20 has a slightly less damage, but it fires faster, it has 16 rounds in its magazine, which is more than enough. And personally this weapon, again, even though it's DMR, it feels much better at close or middle combat again. Much more on the close one. I use this weapon flanking enemies again when I try to fire at someone across the street. It just felt a bit more that it just suited the situations more this way. But for the rating itself, I can say that even in stock it can do the job. But for me it was a good weapon. For me it even could go into A, just because of the way it handled. Now the M110 is the complete opposite of MK20, as I said before, because it has only 12 rounds in the magazine, but it has 51 damage and a slower fire rate, of course. Now I use this weapon, when I try to use this weapon at close combat, how I used MK20, it's not possible, or not, at least for me it wasn't possible. So here for you it is much better to find a spot. You just try to kill enemies that do not see you, even if you're just camping out in a taller building, being in a small corner, shooting someone across the street, or something like that, because you cannot win in a close combat. It's just a fact. Before you even shoot your second round, you're already dead most of the time. This weapon is actually working only as the Marksman rifle for me. I couldn't do anything else with it. It sucks at long ranges in this stock form, but it is also absolutely unusable when you're using it at close combat. That's at least my experience. But for the gun itself, it does its role good. If you know how to use it, if it will fit you, I would say it is slightly above average. Now the MK14 was actually a big kind surprise to me again, because this rifle actually can have semi-auto or full auto. Absolutely perfectly fitting my style of how I play. Actually, for what they are, I actually like the iron sights. The capacity is 16 rounds, which sometimes is not enough when you're in a close combat, but for me it was always enough. It did perfectly, and the full auto really did work when you needed it. You just needed to be a tiny bit more careful, But if you knew how to use this gun, you knew how to position yourself, you knew again how to flank an enemy, no problem, this gun for me could go into an S tier. Now the SVD was pretty good as well. It has a 41 damage, 30 round magazine capacity, fire rate of 440, which is more than the MK14, and mainly the iron sights are not too bad as well. I preferred using this weapon again, not as someone who is pushing, but who is looking at buildings and windows if there's someone peeking, or again if there's someone running across the street, I'm peeking at a corner, or just trying to be a bit more further back, trying to snipe your way through. Now I personally could say it didn't fit me, but I see the big potential in this weapon because of the way it handles. It didn't fit my playstyle, which is why I'm putting it to B. So here we have our L86. So what I imagine when they said light support guns, I expected a lot of, again, ammo, a lot of kick, tiny little less damage, but actually this is way different than I thought. The L86 has 31 damage, a capacity of 30 rounds, which was surprising, but the fire rate of 775. This will shred, and actually the recoil of it is not bad at all. I absolutely enjoyed this weapon, and I sometimes even use this weapon for fun because of how well it handles. Now what I mind about this weapon is that it just isn't as usable in every scenario, but the weapon again personally didn't fit me. I don't know why, because this weapon I really wanted to place this weapon as high as possible, but for me it can only go A. There's something about this weapon that I mind and I cannot just figure out why. Now we're talking, because here we have the RPK-16. So when we talked about the AK-15, this is pretty much if AK-15 had a child with some kind of machine gun and this came out, because you see the damage gets a little bit down. It has a 32 damage, 680 rounds per minute. However, it has a 45 mag capacity, which is absolutely crucial for this weapon. The iron sights are the same, the weapon feels the same as the AK-15, but this just makes it much more fun. The weapon itself is more smooth, it just feels a lot better. And to be honest, I loved using this weapon as a stock. Even with attachments, this weapon is just something I would use every day. If I needed to make a quest with flight support guns, this is the gun I will choose every day. And that is why I have to give this gun an S tier for me. If you're wondering why I'm using this image, it's literally because they do not have this weapon added to the Wikipedia yet. So actually, if you love G36C, I can say that the MG36 is gonna be your best pick. The gun again feels the same pretty much, because it's a machine. It has a slightly slower fire rate, but instead it has higher damage and more ammo capacity, and it is actually really fun. For me personally, the weapon is good, but again, it's not great. It will fit a certain type of person, certain type of playstyle, but unfortunately, I am not him. I am not that person. But I will happily give it an A tier. So the M249, it is exactly what you would expect from a machine gun, which of course it is. I don't know why I even said that. Whatever. 200 ammo capacity, absolutely beautiful. I wouldn't use it as a usual gun. I would just use it as either support, just pretty much holding angle, which again it does very well. But again, here the rating is gonna be bit different because I cannot totally judge it because I do not play that position, stuff like that. For me at least, I could give it to B. Now the Ultimax, that is a different story, because as I said, the M249 is mainly used for holding an angles or like supporting your teammate. With the Ultimax, I felt it's the exact opposite. For me, I always had to run with it, because when I stayed at one spot I immediately got destroyed, so I had to move positions, I had to be really close to enemies, but it worked really well when close. The biggest disadvantage it has is the 100 round mag, but you can still work with it. And even though it's a disadvantage, the advantage now is that it's a drum mag, it doesn't take as long to reload. And I can say that to me personally, the Ultimax feels much better than the M249, which is why I am ranking this machine gun A. So the MP7, it shines in its way because of its firepower. It is a really high fire rate, only 30 rounds in a magazine, but that's still usable. The iron sights didn't feel too bad or anything, and the recoil wasn't as bad as I thought it would be. Sometimes the damage just isn't enough. But for me personally, it cannot go higher than B. Now the PP2000, probably the only PP I like. So to me the PP2000 is like an MP7 if it was actually good. It is slightly less damage, but it instead has 1000 fire rate, and the recoil control stays the same. Maybe it's even actually better than the MP7, which is kinda sad, but it is what it is. I really like the iron sights, and the gun overall felt really good. The only problem with this gun is that your face is getting fucked by this thing. I don't know why is that, but it is what it is. But to me, this gun could absolutely deserve an S. So the Honey Badger. The gun performs much better than I thought it would. It has a suppressor built into it. The iron sights are actually pretty okay. The only major flaw it has is the small magazine capacity of 25 and the slower fire rate. But yeah, the recoil is manageable. The iron sights aren't too bad. I only mind the magazine size, but because of those two things, I wouldn't say it's worse than or same as MP7, but at the same time I cannot say I absolutely love this weapon and would choose it over anything else, so for me it could be an A. So the P90, here is the deal. If you do not know how to aim, or actually if you even know how to aim and you just don't want to aim, you just take this gun, 50 rounds in a magazine, you just go. Then you're done. That's pretty much that's all you need to do. The recoil isn't too hard to control. The iron sights are completely fine with me, and it's overall a great gun. But for me, again, it just doesn't give me that itch, I would say, as the PP2000 gives me. So for me, easy A. If there was just if there was just a tiny bit more to this gun, I would give it an S. No doubts about that. So snipers, I will go just quickly over them, because there isn't too much to say, at least for myself, because it all seemed the same. I'm not actually kidding. The SSG-69, it wasn't a bad weapon. Again, first sniper you get in the game. Not bad, not good. I would say that this could go into C. It's just like the middle. SV-98, you get a better damage, you get a higher velocity, so it's already an upgrade, but still nothing great, so B for me. The L96 is a bit comparatively better, at least I think so, than the SV-98. It is enough for me to go into A tier, but not enough to go into an S. The Remington 700 is a good weapon as well. Even though I didn't find my own luck with it, I would say it could go into B because it has high vehicle damage and the velocity is also good. And it actually sounds like a sniper rifle. Now the M208 is gonna be an S for me already. It has the highest velocity in the game, it has a good damage. I would absolutely choose this sniper rifle over any of these, even the MSR. Now the MSR is better than the M200 in one thing, which is accuracy, but because of the smaller velocity and because it has slightly less damage, that's why I will leave it in the A tier. M9, to be honest, this doesn't get more mid than it is. Like, I'm not joking, this gun screams mid at you. The damage is fine, the fire rate is fine, but it just doesn't have anything else. Like, it doesn't have anything more to give you than just be used. That sounds really bad that I think about it now. Let's just skip to it right away. For me, again, personally, I cannot put this weapon any higher than C. So the MP443 is trying to be a bit better than the M9, because it lost the damage, but it is somewhat more controllable. It has more ammo, it has a bigger fire rate, but it is just a tiny bit better than the M9, just a tiny bit, like. So for me, honestly, it will go into B tier. So we are moving on to the USB. Now you see this gun combined the M9 and the MP443 together. It created something magical. It created something that's so fucking pointless. It doesn't work. It combined those two weapons, but it only took the worst parts out of it. Why did you even do? Why did you thought that was a good idea? What was even good about this weapon in the first place? Why did someone thought I will make this? Why I just don't just D. I will not even talk about it. Now the Glock. For now it's the only automatic weapon in the secondaries category, which already gives it a huge advantage. It has 19 rounds in a mag, which is completely fine for me at least. 19 damage, and it can save you if you know what you're doing. And overall it is a pretty good weapon. So for me, it goes easily into an S tier. I will not even try to pronounce this. So this revolver has its own unique feature. It does a lot of damage, but of course the recoil is really much higher than you would expect. Actually, you would expect such recoil. Well, that's on me. But the weapon itself, I just don't find it fascinating in any way. But for me, at least, this weapon doesn't deserve a better spot than a B. Now the Desert Eagle. I was actually hyped up for getting this weapon because I really wanted to try and see how it does, how it performs, and yeah, I do not know how to work with this. Pretty much the weapon, its damage is great, it has a mag so it reloads fast, but you cannot see anything. Like, I couldn't see absolutely anything. Could be just a skill issue of mine, I don't know, but for me this weapon unfortunately goes D. Now the RSH, now here is where it gets interesting. It has a slightly higher damage, slower fire rate, and still uses 5 rounds. The iron sights at least fit my playstyle, and overall the weapon feels good. Actually, it could feel great. The only problem is just the ammo capacity and the recoil, but this recoil I would say is actually something you can get used to. So for me, this is an A tier.